That speech of over an hour is one of the most unbelievable speeches you will ever hear coming from not just the mouth of an American president, but certainly from any global leader. He's basically said that he is going to take Greenland by hook or crook. The only thing he's clarified is he's not going to use military force. He can use military force if he wants to, but he's being nice to Denmark. He says Denmark is being very ungrateful. He says it was a stupid thing for the US to give Greenland back to Denmark after saving Greenland after World War II. But now he says he wants Greenland because only that can help build the Golden Dome, which Trump is building to protect continental United States as well as the entire Western Hemisphere. He says NATO is ungrateful. He had to come along for NATO to raise its defense spending. And he says that he is going to start negotiations, going to start a dialogue on acquiring Greenland. So he's not going to give up on his long-cherished dream of acquiring Greenland or getting Greenland. Like I said, the only saving grace is that he has said that he's not going to use military force even though he can. So he's clarified that. But this is an unbelievable speech. I don't think in the history of Davos, any world leader, any sitting American president has made this kind of a speech. Trump has been there at Davos numerous times in his first term as well, but he's not made a speech like this. And I think it's really it's blown up, not just the room where he made that speech, but certainly it's blowing up across all your timelines on social media, on websites, across newspapers tomorrow morning. This is going to be plastered all over the front pages. I want to see first if we can go across to Chandra or to Shireen, who are joining us from Davos, where, of course, you've heard the most unbelievable speech in the last 1 hour from US President Donald Trump. The big headline is he is going to take Greenland, whether they like it or not, whether Denmark likes it or not. Let me go across to Shireen. Shireen, what's the mood in the room? I mean, the speech is blown up, not just that room, but across the world.
Well, I have to say, Zaka, that this is exactly on point for Donald Trump. He's gone as per script, even though he was probably not on script for a large part of that speech. As I've been reporting here from Davos, Donald Trump making it clear he wants Greenland. But here's the interesting thing, that while he spoke about why Greenland is important, why the US must get Greenland, and that Denmark should in fact be grateful to the US and should respectfully hand over Greenland to the US, he also said, I could use excessive force, but I won't. And that is why you've seen the reaction in the US stock markets. The US stock markets were trading lower before President Trump spoke, and now they have recovered. In fact, they've rebounded off their intraday lows on the back of what President Trump seemed to suggest there, that he was not looking at using force. But just a few moments later, he also said that, look, if you give Greenland to us, we'll be appreciative. But if you don't, I will remember. We will remember. What does that mean? But so far, the market mood certainly seems to suggest that the view is that President Trump is not going to use military force to get Greenland. Now, this was quintessential Trump. He went after Mark Carney, he went after Macron, he went after the Prime Minister of Switzerland. I mean, he told Europe that you're doing a bad job of managing Europe. So this was President Trump on a roll. Many things, of course, catering to the domestic constituency about how great the US is, how the economy has rebounded, how his administration has been the only administration in the last several decades that has done anything for affordability, for the American middle class, to get jobs in manufacturing back. And this is not new. We've seen President Trump make these statements previously. So as I said, pretty much on script there, but no holds barred, and a very long address starting at 2:30 local time here in Davos and closing at 3:52. And of course, he is now in conversation with Larry Fink here at the World Economic Forum. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more that may emerge out of there, but it's going to be interesting to see the dynamics of that EU leaders meeting with President Trump. How do they now react to this? It's also important, look at the performative aspects of what President Trump has been doing in the last 48 hours ahead of Davos. Putting out screenshots of messages from the NATO General Secretary, from Macron. I mean, these are things that we haven't seen leaders do. But President Trump making it clear that he's putting it out all there in public. Today, of course, was also an issue with his plane. He had to go back. He was delayed coming into Davos, and so the heightened expectation and anticipation was building. But it's pretty much what was expected. Status quo there on his ambition and his want of Greenland. But the important thing, as I said, which the markets are reacting to, is President Trump saying that he will not use force. At least that's the position at this point in time. Will it change tomorrow or in the next 10 minutes? We don't know. But that is what he had to say in the speech today.
It's like the tariffs on Europe. They agreed at a rate, and then suddenly he slaps 10% more, saying because he wants Greenland. Thank you very much, Shireen, for joining us. That was Shireen Bhan there, Managing Editor, CNBC TV 18. So yes, she's right. The only saving grace in that hour and 20-minute speech was Trump has said that he's not going to use military force. But Trump being Trump, can we take him at his word? Let me now go across to our experts who are joining us on this. Raymond Vickery is author and advisor on U.S.-India relations. We're also joined by Brahma Chalani, strategic affairs expert. Mr. Vickery, let me start with you first. Having served, in previous administrations, nothing that Trump does or says is something that we are used to or something that the world can get used to, because it's completely, it's like going into the great unknown. But as Shireen was saying a moment ago, he's basically saying he wants to sit down with the Europeans and take Greenland back. He says Europe has been ungrateful, Denmark has been ungrateful. We gave Greenland away after World War II, after defending it from the Nazis, and that was a stupid thing to do. He says he can use force if he wants to, but he won't. How do you see Europe sort of reacting to this, come to terms with this, and do they even get to a negotiating table to actually, buy and sell Greenland?
Well, thanks very much for having me and allowing me to comment. First, I want to emphasize to your viewers that Donald Trump is not the United States of America. We have existed for 250 years. We will have midterms. We have institutions. Second, I'd like to say that Donald Trump is very adept at creating his own reality. For 14 years, he was on television as a reality TV star. And so this is his stock in trade. The statements that he makes are outright lies in many cases in regard to starting that he won the election in 2020. Beyond that, if you look at the whole question of Greenland, it seems to me to show how far he has strayed from basic principles which have basically kept the peace in the world since World War II. Before that, the idea that you could have an empire was a measure of greatness, whether it be Alexander the Great, Peter the Great, and so forth. But we, at the end of World War II, realized that if you take that empire building approach, sooner or later empires run up against each other and you have a disastrous generalized violence in the place of rule of law. Unfortunately, Donald Trump has reverted to the old-time thinking which has governed since time immemorial, in which we tried to ameliorate and get out of with many institutions after World War II. The question of Greenland is indicative of how far we have come from that. I believe that in the final analysis, that saner heads are going to prevail both in the United States and in Europe. And I believe we'll be able to work our way around it, but it's going to be a very difficult time. And the time for trying to placate President Trump and simply work within his frame of reality is over, and it's time for peace-loving nations, democratic nations, whether they be in Asia, whether they be in Western Europe, wherever they are, to come together to try to get back to the principles which have largely kept the peace since World War
So,
II.
Brahmacharani, basically Trump is taking us back to a world which existed in the 18th and 19th centuries, to an America which existed in the 18th and 19th centuries. He's basically saying, you know, with the Louisiana Purchase or with the purchase of California from Mexico, he wants to expand American territory. Like I said, the only silver lining in that hour and 20-minute speech was that he said he's not going to use force. But again, tomorrow he could say something else. He is seriously wanting to sit down with Denmark and with the rest of Europe and negotiate the peaceful handover of the territory of Greenland from Denmark to the United States. And he's linking it not to rare earths. He's in fact dissed the whole rare earth business, and he said this is purely because of the Golden Dome to protect America. He says that's why we need Greenland.
You're right, Zaka. Trump is unique in his openness. He articulates his expansionist goals without diplomatic euphemism. But we should not forget that he is not the first post-World War II US president pursuing American expansion. It was because of his predecessors' global expansion that there are around 750 US military bases today in at least 80 countries. Even the Biden administration, as you know, sought to acquire a strategic island in the Bay of Bengal from Bangladesh, an effort that the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina claimed contributed to her overthrow. So the US has been an expanding country under successive American presidents. But I think what stands out about Trump is his brazenness. And the message he delivered in Davos was that he sees America not just as a global power, but as an entitled hegemon. His patronizing tone rubbed in that message. In fact, such was his haughty tone that he claimed that without the US, no country in the world would work.
Yeah.
Trump even criticized his host country, Switzerland. He said they're only good because of us. And I think his speech validated the fears expressed by many world leaders that the US has become the biggest disruptor in the world, if not the biggest threat to international security today.
But how does the rest of the world deal with this? I mean, you can't pretend to ignore America. It's still the biggest economy in the world. It's still the biggest military power in the world. How does the world deal with a person? I mean, Gen Z uses a phrase called delulu. I mean, I don't know if what I heard is delulu, because there has to be a great degree of self-delusion or self-aggrandizement to believe that in this day and age, someone will just hand over a piece of territory, a sovereign piece of territory to you because you asked and because you can. Brahmacharani.
Well, he called Greenland a piece of ice.
Yeah.
And he said that asking for formal ownership of Greenland is, quote unquote, a small ask. But then Europe has to blame itself. It was European leaders who cheered Trump's military action in Venezuela, the virtual takeover of a country, and the stealing of its oil assets. The European leaders were cheering that action. Today, they are facing Trump's expansionist ambitions now. The fact is that Trump's second term is proving even more disruptive than his first, especially for the world order. In just 1 year, in his second term, he has upended international norms, challenged key alliances, and reasserted American power with blunt confidence. He has shown that he is addicted to the use of military force, despite projecting himself as an international peacemaker. And his willingness to redraw borders through coercion reflects a revival of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny was a 19th century belief rooted, the belief was that the US possesses a God given right to expand its dominion across land and sea. In fact, many people have forgotten that in his inaugural speech, exactly a year ago, Trump invoked manifest destiny and went on to say that the US now, under his leadership, will be an expanding power. So what he is doing is what he outlined in his own inaugural speech. And I think what we are seeing is a Trump that believes that in his second term he has to reshape America's destiny. So he's a man in a rush, man who wants to redesign
Okay.
America and the global landscape.
So let me.
And he,
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
Let me get a final word from Raymond Vickery, because the big war that's happening in continental Europe right now, and has been for almost 4 years now, is the Russia-Ukraine war. Suddenly no one's talking about that. That's been relegated to the sidelines because Trump is now posing an even more existential threat to Europe than perhaps even Putin is.
Well, I think that to say that what Trump is doing and proposing is a continuation of what the United States has been doing since World War II is absolutely wrong. This is a break from the rule of law, from our own Constitution in terms of how institutions are paramount as opposed to a particular person. And at this point, it is necessary for the great democracies of the world, whether they be India, whether they be Canada, in Western Europe, in Japan, and the democratic forces within the United States, in Brazil, to join together, to find a way to build upon the principles which were set forth after World War II in order to keep the peace and build prosperity. Peace, like war, must be waged. And it takes a strategy, it takes partners, and it takes tenacity to be able to do it. Unfortunately, President Trump, is not part of the solution to world peace and prosperity. He's part of the problem. And so it's up to the great democracies of the world who have respect for basic principles to find a way now to work together to be able to get past this, and our own institutions will help.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us, Raymond Vickery, and to Brahma Chalani.